Selamat datang Ibu Sri Mulyani, luar biasa. Selamat malam dari Semarang Bu, saya tadi pagi juga baru pulang. Ada acara kebetulan beda acaranya. Nah ini karena beliau sudah hadir, kita langsung dengan hormat memohon untuk berkenan memberikan sambutan Ibu Sri Mulyani. Monggo. Nanti setelah sambutan disambung nyanyi Bu. Monggo Ibu.
I think this is one of many surprises from Indonesian Accountant Association. It turns out that we are having fun and it's not as scary as people thought. And if we see from the dress code, I could have worn the same if I'm given one. And the funny thing is, we just finished a singing session and I'm suddenly being asked to give a speech. I thought I wouldn't need to give one and then being asked to give a serious speech by my vice minister, who happens to be the chief of IAA and who might be the only candidate for current Congress. But from the backdrop behind the stage, it can be seen there are many sustainable development goals. So maybe Indonesian accountants want to express that we do not only watch over balance sheet and income statements, but we also aim for the worldly goals to create a better world by means of the 17 indicators of sustainable development goals. This is a remarkable surprise for me. Please have an applause for IAA. So if I talk about accountant and accountability, I think that's not necessary for tonight, especially since we just had that We Will Rock You session. It'll feel weird, I guess. But maybe we can talk about something a little bit serious. On the other day, Mr. President expressed his expectation, which probably is our homework for the future of the Republic of Indonesia. We have come to many things in the past 20 years after Reformation. We are currently in 2018. It's been 20 years since Reformation. In the age of humans, 20 years old is already considered an adult who can lead themselves to their future, and our Reformation era starting from 1998 until now, 2018, has achieved many things as well. Starting from the National Finance Law, the National Treasury Law, the Audit Board Law, the Financial Services Authority Law, the Government Accountability Law, the Financial Crisis Law on Financial System Safety Net, and many others that might become the foundation for financial management in Indonesia in this Reformation era, which has the spirit of openness, transparency, and accountability, and we still have quite a long journey. If I may tell a story here, maybe the conclusion will be We Will Rock You Again, right? Because we began from non-existing balance sheet to now become exist. The balance sheet of the Republic of Indonesia, can you imagine? IAA is 61 years old, but Indonesia just had it since which year, Mr. Mardiosmo? 2005. And the Minister of Finance at that time happened to be Sri Mulyani, coincidentally. That was such a bad luck, because I just became the Minister of Finance and then being asked by the National Financial Law to make balance sheet. And so accounting class wasn't my favorite, but I had to face it every day, the balance sheet. Disclaimer, certainly there was a lot of incompletes. The assets were incomplete, but the liability was complete because those who owed us have the record. So the assets weren't complete, the equity was not clear, so there are many who sit in this room who contributed in the financial journey of Republic of Indonesia. I should have asked IAA to record that, because it was a very historical episode, and it was the main core of accounting, even though it was government accounting. From the non-existing balance sheet became the existing one, and then became qualified opinion, and lastly became unqualified opinion. That was a long journey. When I was waiting for the unqualified opinion, I was in Indonesia. So it felt like the one who started it must end it. Hopefully it'll be like this from now on. In this context, now we actually have at least the foundation from the laws and management. Then come the business practice, a proper state administration practice. The case where the results of each year might not meet the maximum expectation is a different thing. At least the proper foundation of Republic of Indonesia is already running well. In this room, the late Mr. Hekinus Manao is probably here with us. There is also Mr. Sony Luhut and Mr. Vice Minister who already lead us here. When I went back to Indonesia, I received the position of Minister of Finance. But the difference is I didn't have a Vice Minister. In the span of 18 months, I even had 2 positions as the Minister of Finance and Economy at that time. Now, when I'm back, I became the Minister of Finance again, but this time I have a Vice Minister, and he is an accounting professor and also the chief of IAA. So it's easy for me to say that I don't think I need to delay any longer, and I could not receive a non-unqualified opinion financial statements. That's the Vice Minister's task. That is a task given from me. I don't know what task did Mr. President give to Vice Minister, but what I know, as the Minister, the Vice task is to make sure that the statement is unqualified opinion. And with every of his social connection and influence as a professor and the chief of IAA, we must get the unqualified opinion. Without compromising the quality, of course, it should be kept uncountable. Mr. Ardan has already arrived here. Welcome. So it was such a journey, a remarkable journey. Now we already have an incredible foundation, which not all countries in this world have. When I was the COO of World Bank, I went to more than 80 countries in the world. And the first thing I always ask is, do they have balance sheet and financial statement? I would look through their national revenue budget and also their policy. So like when I went to Jamaica, I learned that they had just begun to create treasury single account. I can tell you a lot about what we did. When we talk about tracking assets and recording assets, I can tell you a lot about how in ministry agency there are things that relatively convenient or very inconvenient or resistant, and how we then finally make all those things. It was an extremely useful and rare experience. because not all 192 countries in the world have experienced and achieved what we have already did. Sometimes we forgot and make fun of things that Indonesia had really seriously achieved. And when I was told that, it turned out that the National Treasury and Finance Law required us to make accrual financial reports. Can you imagine? Even I can understand about cash basis, and they asked me to make accrual reports. So I need to be taught about the meaning of accrual. And turned out that the implication was remarkable. Until we asked for a delay because we were too ambitious that we thought in less than 5 years, the Republic of Indonesia will be ready from the state of having no balance sheet and financial statement until having balance sheet and suddenly went to accrual. How remarkable. Now this is what I see as so many remarkable achievements. And the core is an accountant. I suppose colleagues from IAA can become the spokesperson to say, no, we have done so many things, so our job is done. But at least IAA is a professional association that can have the authoritative to say how wonderful and difficult this journey was. Because even for a company, it is difficult enough. I still remember at the early time of my position as Minister of Finance, I came to IAA office. The chief was Mr. Mardiasmo's predecessor. I think all of IAA chiefs are legendary because I saw their faces on the wall. At that time, we were discussing about government who still had to face the bank restructuring agency and the lack of assets. We had loads of liability because of bailout, but there was no result, or the assets were undervalued or overvalued or non-existent. Maybe there was no land certificate, or after it was checked, turned out that the land was beach or cemetery, but valued as trillions. That was a remarkable episode in the Republic of Indonesia if you talk about accountability, financial crisis, etc. The first thing that we tried to make next was legacy problem, which made Indonesia relatively normal, but doesn't mean we can keep on being complacent. Instead, we have to take care and watch over things that we have achieved. Therefore, I want to say in this 13th IAA Congress dinner and IAA 61st annual celebration, maybe we can have the element of celebration like that We Will Rock You session earlier and so on. It is worth to celebrate the achievements that we already had. However, if we have already celebrated, we mustn't forget about our homework. The first one is the one mentioned by Mr. President. If you want to become an accountable country, give it a proper management. It doesn't mean that we need to be complicated and complex. The process doesn't have to be in high cost. I believe this is what I hope if Professor Mardiasmo will become the next chief of IAA again. That is the homework that need to be done. It means IAA, please consider things so it won't do harm on people. There is village accounting standards, ultra small business accounting standards, medium business accounting standards, holding accounting standards, Sharia accounting standards, and so on and so forth. The point is, if Mr. Mardiasmo says we will use the the financial accounting standards, it would make me fed up. But I only humbly smiled to respond that. But Mr. President on the other day stated his disagreement clearly. Please don't make it any more complicating. We already have much in our lives. Can you make an accountable standard but not too complex, just like what Mr. President requests? And accountability is not the purpose. The real purpose is to make it accountable so that we can deliver our responsibility. Say if we have this much of resource and use it this much, and the result is supposed to be this much. That is what we are supposed to do. Can you make it simpler? And especially in the context where IAA need to educate every stakeholder party.
Don't just talk about it among the members of IAA. It makes me nervous if I see Mr. Mardiasmo sits with Mr. Ardan and Mr. Moore and talks about accounting because I can't understand it. Can you make it simpler so that common people can understand it? So that Cak Lontong can also understand it and make jokes out of it? If he can understand it, next time he can be invited for an event and suddenly he talks about accounting. That sounds impressive, but everyone can still understand it. Because if Cak Lontong can understand and make jokes out of it, other people will surely understand it too. How many followers that you have, Cak Lontong? Oh, you never checked it? Can you do it now? I like it when influencers can help us to be a spokesperson. So firstly, what Mr. President mentioned on the other day is a homework for the members and next chief of IAA. Secondly, we are faced with a world that rely on technology that will change so many things in our lives, including the concept of transparency and accountability. Because if we talk about digital technology, where digital footprints are easy to trace, then the concept of recording and reporting, analytical accountability will also have changes. So it is no wonder when someone said that one of professions threatened by AI is accounting, because the data is recorded automatically, which means the data will be reported in a format that can be analyzed by AI. Therefore, the question for the context that technology exists and will keep changing, what is the future of management and accountability, and also the concept of both? Because what technology mainly disrupt our business process and business model. If both are disrupted, then what is meant by accountability and management? What kind of new management that we need to do? It is something necessary, and because Mr. President emphasized that we need to develop human resources through many trainings, don't let training new accountants become useless. So it is a very serious homework. And of course, it is something that I also hope that this will become one of factors for changes driver. In the Ministry of Finance, we are familiar with this kind of changes. When we dealt with national financial and treasury law,
Then we had reorganization, and Directorate General of Treasury was the first who got affected by disruption. Treasury was once the cashier of the government who receive and pay. Then we all shifted to banks so that after there is information system using national acceptance module, it shifted from 15,000 to now 7,000 because of disruption. That is something that had happened in the Ministry of Finance. We hope that in the future, the Ministry of Finance will also change by utilizing technology, and we will try to continue discussing and searching for the meaning. So maybe from this, I hope that IAA can become our partner, a trustworthy, reliable, and intellectual partner, so that we can design and think through the future of Indonesia. Maybe lastly, I actually can go on even more, but I ask for this to be quick. Earlier, we talked about sustainable development goals. Basically, just like others, the fiscal policy is the instrument to achieve national goals. Accountancy is an instrument to achieve a goal. So it is an often phenomenon in the Republic of Indonesia where the instrument sets as the purpose instead. The public involvement is mistaken. There is one who obsessed with balance sheet or the part of it. There is one who likes to talk about the debt in balance sheet, forgetting about assets and equity. So we also need to be not involved in public confusion. Those in this room supposed to be the one who can help the public. Do not mix the instrument with objective or the purpose. If national revenue budget is used to achieve national purpose, i.e. sovereignty, justice, and dignity of the republic, it follows the purpose instead of dictating the purpose. Just like accounting, it is our instruments to make sure that the management is proper to create accountability so the main purpose of that organization or country can be reached. I am very much appreciating the great cooperation with our internal auditor, Mr. Ardan, the Financial and Development Supervisory Agency, and our external auditor under Mr. Moore's guidance, which now seems to have the same spirit. I can feel an extraordinary and constructive relationship with this institute. So this is something that I really appreciate. And a good relationship is not because of collusion, nepotism, or corruption. It is very different. I can feel a genuine professional relationship. In many discussions, when Mr. Moore says, "Madam, if you can't do this, it can be a disclaimer because the amount is significant. What's the institution? What's the matter?" The Financial Supervisory Agency guide us about all that because they want Republic of Indonesia become a good country and not a part of blackmailing. If you're not like that, I would disclaimer you. It's not like that kind of thing. I feel so comfortable as if there's someone who watch over us. When I faced something like the Social Security Administrator for Health, I have the internal auditor of Financial Supervisory Agency. "Mr. Ardan, can you help me to deal with this much of a bill? Is there anything that you could do?" and such. So as the Minister of Finance and the National Treasurer, this is the first time I really felt equipped by a Vice Minister who is a professor and also the chief of IAA. You all are giving an applause for him. I think you all have agreed there won't need to hold a meeting and can jump into the conclusion. I have the internal auditor, Mr. Ardan, who we can always ask for help professionally. I can trust his integrity. About competency, we will always improve. But at least I know that it is not compromised. And there won't be any intervention. And now, I also have the Financial Supervisory Agency who can help us about things that we need to fix. This is the best settings I could ever feel. I really appreciate it. Hopefully with this, we can achieve great goals, including SDG. I feel very helped by the resources in this country, whether they are assets or the cash flow of the country. We will constantly strive to improve. When I returned as the Minister of Finance, I received operational reports such as operating income and expense. If we don't say that we are only satisfied with unqualified opinion, but our balance sheet structure also needs to be improved, our financial statement needs to be improved. I gradually became sophisticated like an accountant, even though I'm not. Maybe someday I will be invited by IAA as an honorary member. I'm only kidding. Jokes aside, we did loads of extraordinary things, and that's what makes me fall in love with accounting even though I'm already old. When I was young, I was still confused with it. Mr. Paul told me to make a balance, but I could never make it. My accountant friend made it seem so easy to do, while I couldn't solve the balance. Now that I'm old, I fell in love with accounting because it is amazing, something that always have links to everything and everywhere. This allows us to better track where the resource goes and what it becomes. What a weird hobby indeed. I can see why accountant is disliked by many people because it can trace anything. There should have been no room for us to lie and cheat. But of course, there are cases such as Enron and Arthur Anderson. So of course, there is a possibility that you can cheat with your tools. So please, IAA, don't ever do these kind of things. And keep the integrity and professionalism because the tools are used to improve the governance, management, and accountability. That's all I can say to entertain you all after the singing session. I apologize if I disrupt your entertainment tonight. I hope IAA will always become one of proper management pillars in the Republic of Indonesia and become the protector of the Republic of Indonesia to keep moving forward so we can achieve the goals for the country. Just, sovereign, and dignified. Long live Indonesia.
Prof. Murma dan juga Prof. Mardiasmo untuk berkenan ke atas panggung menyerahkan penghargaan berupa token yang akan disilakan oleh Prof. Murma. Ini dia. Tepuk tangan paling meriah untuk Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati. Sambutannya tadi yang luar biasa. Selanjutnya adalah penyerahan buku dengan judul Meneguhkan Kejayaan Akuntan Profesional. Ini dia Prof. Mardiasmo menyerahkan kepada Ibu Sri